Hello and welcome to the Car Care Nut channel, and welcome to things I would like to share with our beloved DIY mechanics. Folks, these are little tips and things that you should know about Toyota and Lexus if you're gonna do it yourself. If you're gonna be that weekend warrior that works on their own car, which I love, encourage, as long as we have a gentleman's agreement. You're gonna do your research properly, you're gonna do things right, and you're gonna know your limits. These are that last part is the biggest part that most people do wrong and end up in trouble. Without further ado, let's get right in. We're going to start with some basics, real basics. Every single DIY mechanic that starts, you want to DIY stuff on your car, you start with the following: the sacred job of the oil change. Folks, oil changes, very simple, and that's what you should start with. Don't tackle anything else in your car before you learn how to do an oil change. But at the same time, understand that an oil change can easily go south and really cause issues. So you gotta do it right. It's your own car here. Now, starting with that, all Toyotas, or at least modern Toyotas, I mean even all the way from the 90s, all the way now, the drain plug is gonna be a 14mm bolt. Very, very simple. They all have the same drain plug gasket, which I will leave right here, the part number 4, and it's just a blue little gasket, very simple, except really old ones, like just one that comes to mind, 7M engine in the 3rd generation Supra. That was for some reason a 24mm size. Just a few odds and ends, but on the modern stuff, anything that is not a Toyota, that is dressed like a Toyota, like a BMW Supra, like a Mazda Yaris deal, like the Subaru deal that does have the 14, at least in the 1st generation, but Toyota engines. That's what we mean. The second one is the oil filter. Folks, you will read long essays about oil filters, and we're going to keep them extremely simple with 2 simple tips. The first one is, if you have a spin-on filter, the easy kind, the kind that everybody loves and really wants in their car, always buy original. That's just my opinion and my advice as someone who worked on Toyotas for a very long time. We're not going to get into that. But the important thing, if you are going to buy original, you actually do not need to lube the gasket. That's the best part. It does come pre-lubed from the factory. All you got to do is take that little covering that it has, install it, and we're done. Just one less step you got to do so you can go back to enjoying your life. And the second thing, which is the one that is the essay part, you don't really need to pre-fill your filter, so you know. Most people will make a giant mess trying to pre-fill the filter, and the filter goes sideways, going to start dribbling, and you're going to make all this mess. Folks, basically, if you put a cheap filter, you did the same thing. Every single time you start your car, you're going to change your oil once every 5,000 miles. When you're talking about a tight tolerance engine that is a race engine that is meant to be driven for 6-hour race, then it goes to the garbage, yes, maybe that matters, but not on your everyday car. So don't get too stressed over that. This is the number one thing that people write essays about, and you know what? They are right. But in the end, you are going to shorten the life of your engine if every oil change you do not pre-fill your oil filter by about 1.7 miles of driving before your engine blows up right before 800,000 miles. So I think we can live with that and avoid the mess of spilling oil all over the place and potentially having it in the ground, then it seeps into the sewer system, and it's not worth it. Don't bother with that. This is advice from professional folks. And then if you have a canister style filter, folks, people really dislike the canisters, and here's the God honest truth. They're exactly the same thing. We talked about this. I'll leave this video right here where we took apart an oil filter, and you see that it's exactly the same thing as a spin-on, but there is the original tool that takes this spin-on filter, and then there is horrible tools that take off the spin-on filter, and there's the really good ones. I'll leave in the description of this video some good, budget-friendly options that actually grab the filter itself, because you do not want to grab just the tip unless you have a really good wrench. But the aftermarket ones, or the cheapo ones that grab the tips of the filter, are the ones you should be using so you wouldn't slip, wouldn't crack it. Do not over tighten the filters. This is very important. 18 foot-pounds is the torque. If you're not sure, torque them to spec. We don't have any issues after that. Now we're going to talk about some intermediate DIY tasks. So you've done your oil changes, you've done your suspension work, you've done a lot of stuff to your car, and now you're ready to take up a new skill: airbags. Folks, you got to be really careful with airbags. You see professionals working in airbags and feel like we treat them like little toys, and that is a very bad appearance, and I will agree with that. Some professionals handle airbags, mishandle airbags, but remember, we work with these things almost every single day. So when you see us treat them like they are a little toy, we are fully aware of the dangers, and you should really understand the dangers and understand what to do and what not to do with airbags. Let's talk about them briefly, and then we're going to talk about the biggest airbags you might actually be removing as a DIYer. As a DIYer, until you really get familiar with dealing with airbags, always disconnect the negative battery terminal, wait 90 seconds. You will see professionals, myself included, not do that, but we are aware of the dangers and we are assuming these risks. You do not need to do that because you are not fully aware of the inner workings of the airbag system. If you are, then you will be comfortable doing that. But always disconnect the battery, and most importantly, wait 90 seconds before you attempt anything. Rule number 2 about airbags: you will never ever cut any airbag wire. Any yellow wire, always all the airbag wires in the car will be yellow colored, and that is intentional, kind of like hybrid high voltage wires will be orange, so you can see them, you can understand this is a wire you need to be careful with. Never cut them. If a wire gets cut, look into replacement. Do not attempt repairs on airbag wires. It's a giant red flag and you should never do it. That's very important. And the most important thing, never work on a live circuit. You will never have the key on and be disconnecting airbag stuff. That is a very bad idea. And the biggest thing is the airbag computer usually sits somewhere underneath the dash or sometimes in the center console. You will never unbolt it with the car on or the key on. Now, it is a guarantee you will blow the airbags. That is something you should not be doing. And the most important thing, you removed an airbag, you're installing some accessories, you're doing something to your car. You need to remove an airbag. You remove the airbag, you put it face up, never face down. Should this airbag deploy, it will not be something that throws itself up in the sky. If you put it face up, if it accidentally deploys, it's going to deploy up and nothing will happen. Just the bag will come up and it'll come down. But if you put it upside down, it will deploy down to the ground and it's going to throw it and potentially destroy your car, hurt you, hurt your family, destroy your home. Be careful with airbags. Always store them in a place that is safe, away from your work area, and facing up. That is very important. Then I said all that just for us to talk about the airbags a little bit. The steering wheel airbag. It seems like that's the one that folks will remove for one reason or another. You're replacing a clock spring spiral cable, you're doing something, you are going to want to remove it. For the longest time, Toyotas had 2 T27 Torx at the side. There's 2 little covers. You take them out, Torx, airbag comes out, 2 connectors, horn connector, it's out. But around 2012, they actually changed it. They no longer have the screws. They actually have clips holding the airbag. Many people really dislike this change because it's a little confusing until you know what you're doing. Then it's very simple. You don't need tools. You just need a little screwdriver and off goes the airbag on the steering wheel. So here's what you do. You take the covers on the side. You're going to find these 3 tabs. There's exactly 3 tabs that you need to locate. You're going to unclip this one, unclip this one, unclip this one, and the thing is out. And guess what? When you go back to install it, you're just going to put the airbag, push it in, make sure all 3 corners are pushed in, and you're done. It's clipped. Folks really dislike that, but it actually works great. It takes it no more than a few minutes, once you know what you're doing, to take it off. You don't need any tools, any fancy tools. You don't need to tighten anything. It takes you 1 second to install it. Just clip it in and we're done. Beautiful. I actually like those. They're simple. And this one is a very important one. The radios. Your radio broke, the screen doesn't work, you wiped it down with Windex, which by the way you should never do. Not Windex, but ammonia in the Windex. If you get ammonia-free Windex, we're good, but don't use ammonia on an infotainment screen, you will ruin it. And if you did that and you're trying to replace it, you're gonna look for a faceplate ID number, a number that is innocently written on the face of the radio. That is the number you go by, not the part number, not anything else. That is the number. You go on eBay, for example, you're trying to buy a used one, you put that number, you get exactly the same one. But here is a general warning. Around 2018 and up, they got rid of the faceplate ID number, and after that, dealership is the only way you can guarantee that you're getting the exact same radio, because then it's kind of a luck of the draw, if you would, because you go by the part number, sometimes it's right, sometimes it's not. That's how, just the way they did it. So be very careful, and here's a tip on those. You take the radio out, you're going to see Toyota's part number. Sometimes that's not the reference to go by, but if you look somewhere around the radio, you'll find the original manufacturer's part number. That's the one you go by. So if it's a Pioneer, whatever the case may be, Fujitsu I think also makes radio for Toyota, you'll find the part number of them and then use that, because the Toyota part number sometimes will be the same, because that's the radio for this car. Doesn't matter who the manufacturer is. Be careful with radios that have no faceplate ID, but the ones that do, you get one exactly the same faceplate ID, we have the exact same radio, no questions about it. Even if the production date's different, even if this came from a much newer model of this same generation, it'll be exactly the same radio without questions, without doubts. Let's talk about some advanced stuff. The advanced DIYer will be someone who is one job away from becoming a full-blown technician here, or a mechanic. Some diagnosis stuff and some little stuff that you should be aware of. First one is start-stop technology. Now, we've talked about how start-stop technology works. I'll leave that video right here. But if you have a car with start-stop technology, you need to be aware of the battery. Folks, these batteries take us, it's kind of a special battery. And if you can install a regular battery in instead, but you got to go in a scan tool and register it. It's a very simple process if you have a capable scan tool, or better yet, if you have TechStream. But you got to register this battery for the electronics to work right. Otherwise, things will be a little odd. So I thought I'd put this one here because this is one that often people forget, and they're not anticipating in a Toyota. If you have a BMW, that's the norm. But in a Toyota, you don't anticipate that you have to register a battery. But in the start-stop technology cars, you actually have to. And the next one is a diagnosis one. One that is kind of, even some technicians will not know this. And this is, ask me how I know that, because I have seen this happen all the time. People have never heard of this. You have a code P171, 174, and these codes are sometimes very difficult to diagnose. But here's the easiest way to rule out one thing. Mass airflow. People will always just go and replace it, just for the sake of seeing if this will take care of it. Well, here's a tip for you to actually diagnose it properly, if it's a mass airflow causing the 171 or not. You go drive the car, warm it up first, make sure it's fully warmed up. Hook up a scan tool. You're gonna look at calculated load. That is a number that is directly derived from the mass airflow reading. Because when you look at the mass airflow reading, it's just how much flow of air there is. Well, what's the spec? There's actually spec, but the spec is only for idle and 2500 without load. It doesn't really tell you when you're driving. And that's the key thing here. Here is how you watch the calculated load. When you're sitting at idle, it should be somewhere between 16% to 25%. It'll vary between models, but somewhere around there. Pretty normal. We're not going to worry about that. But when you accelerate and you go full throttle while you are driving, not standing still, you're driving full throttle, you should see it go up to 80, 90%. If all of a sudden it only goes to 50, 60, 65, and it doesn't want to go to that 80, 90, you have a mass airflow issue, 100%. That's the easiest way to tell. And what you're going to do after that is not run to the parts store and get a new one. First, don't be a parts replacer. Take that mass airflow, spray it with carburetor cleaner or throttle body cleaner, generous amount, and then use compressed air gently. Not with force, because there's a little wire. If you break it, mass airflow is destroyed. Gently dry it, and then try it a couple times, put it back, go drive it again. Did that number improve? If it all of a sudden goes to 80, 90, we are good. All it needed was a little cleaning, we're good. Usually, however, that is not the case. Usually, here's what I see from experience. You go drive this car, you floor it, wide open throttle. You'll get to 40-50%, and the car will even sometimes bog down. You'll feel like underpowered. You clean it, now you can see 65-70, but you're not quite seeing 80-90. You do that, you have verified that you have a mass airflow problem, go buy a new one. You tried to clean it, it's not cleaning. Some of these are tricky to clean without damaging them. So in that case, replace it. But that's how you do your diagnosis. I see so many folks get a P171, they go immediately buy a mass airflow. And here's the second problem with that. Buy an aftermarket mass airflow. Let's set the ground rules here, if you would. You will never buy any mass airflow for any Toyota that is not original. Folks, I've seen this mistake happen, and you end up in kind of the unknown land of, do we have a good mass airflow, or is it even right for this car? Don't risk it. Mass airflows is one of those things. You always go original. But before you go buy that expensive original mass airflow, spend 15-20 minutes knowing what you are looking for to check if that mass airflow is actually bad or not bad. And first try to clean it. Most of the times, you'll be able to clean it unless it's really bad. But if you are able to clean it and get that number closer to 80-90, we're good. But if not, replace it with an original one and you're good. But you did your due diligence, we did things right, we're not just parts replacer here. And the last one is kind of an oldie one. In case you're that DIYer that's working on a really old Toyota, and this is one that it's not even in the book, it's kind of an odd one. You have an airbag light. Now, the old Toyotas, you can't just hook up a scan tool to them and read airbag light codes. You have to jump 2 wires and the flashing light and that whole thing. Just nostalgic to me. But if you have an airbag light in an old Toyota that says code 22, remember, airbag light is on, code 22. Code 22 states the airbag warning light is malfunctioning. Wait a second. Does that even make sense? Exactly, it does not make sense. So basically the code is telling you the bulb for the airbag warning light is burned out. Yet the airbag light is on and you are reading the code off of the airbag light, so how come it's burned out? This will throw technicians into massive loops. They'll replace the airbag computer, they'll freak out. If you are an older technician, you probably remember this, but the younger technicians, they look at this like, what is going on here? This doesn't make sense. Folks, this one is very simple. If you disconnect the airbag computer, sometimes if you get a really weak battery that kills the car, or you disconnect the combo meter or the gauges, this code will pop up. And people just don't know what to do with it. They'll do everything. And here's a simple thing. There are 2 wires in the diagnostic connector under the hood. I'm trying to draw my mind to what the name of it is. I'm going to put it on the screen because I want to make sure that this is 100% accurate. You're going to alternate between ground and this wire with the key on. You're going to see that the airbag light will start shutting off, turning on, shutting off, turning on. Keep doing that multiple times. Eventually, you actually erase that code, and you are supposed to do that every time you disconnect some components that trigger that code. That code will throw technicians in a giant loop, and it absolutely makes no sense, and it's buried somewhere in the repair manual, but it's not apparent that you can find it and know how to do this process. So if you get a code 22 in an old Toyota with a flashing airbag light code reading, do this. And I'll take care of it. That's all it is. It just needs a reset of the code. That's it. Folks, good luck wrenching and DIYing. I encourage everybody to DIY their car because you get that intimate moment with this machine that you love so much, you care for, and you get to work on it, you get to do things right, but here are the ground rules that we're gonna shake hands on, do a gentleman's agreement. You're gonna research. I make videos on YouTube. Many other mechanics who are much better than I am also make videos on YouTube for you to learn how to work on your car, to learn from our long careers working on cars. Watch videos, learn, educate yourself. If you feel like you've got enough of watching videos, go read the repair manual. Repair manuals are a little technical and difficult, but they're meant for professionals, but you will still, some of them are really good. Toyota makes decent repair manuals. Some of the older ones are vague, but the newer ones are much better. Research before you do. Kind of measure 3 times and cut once. This is the same thing. Learn before you do. That's very important when you're working on cars. And the second thing is, and this is where we're going to shake hands on, know your limits. What I mean by that, don't get yourself in a situation where you're halfway through a job that you cannot finish. This is a very bad moment. You potentially disabled your car, got yourself in a very bad situation, and when you go end up taking this car to a mechanic all torn apart, it's going to cost you a lot more, and we kind of become counterproductive. Let us have a pact here, right here on this video, gentleman's agreement, eye to eye, we're going to cross our hearts. We're going to do this the right way. Before you start a job, you can research. If you feel that gut feeling inside of you, you know what, this may be outside of my skill level, you should listen to that voice. Because we all get ourselves, I'm a car mechanic, but I also DIY stuff at my home, things that I used to have no business doing. Of course, that's just how our nature is. You do not want to find yourself in that situation. If you feel like this is a job that's too big, stop. Call a professional. Now you're informed. You should be able to guesstimate how much this shop should cost so you wouldn't be taking advantage of. But don't tackle jobs that you can't handle, because then you end up in a very bad situation, especially after watching this video and we shook hands here. We're not going to get ourselves in bad situations, because it breaks my heart when I get a car in the shop that a customer attempted to do a DIY job and they kind of didn't do the research and they got stuck, and now the car is here and this whole situation is a really bad situation, and I wish it on nobody, but unfortunately it happens. We all learn from our mistakes, and that's the best thing about us. Folks, I hope this video was helpful, informative. I hope you learned something new. If you like it, consider giving it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of my other videos. And until the next video, folks, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and you have yourself a wonderful day.